These coaches are in must-win territory. They're not quite on the hot seat just yet, but if you have another missed expectation type of season in 2026, the seat could be getting hotter for these coaches that I think are in must-win territory for the 2026 college football season. Hello, everyone. I'm Lucas Hill here at the Southern Sports Scene. Make sure you all do us a favor and hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notification so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or posting a short here on the Southern Sports Scene. Every live show brought to you by our good friends at Frost Buddy. Going over to frostbuddy.com. Use the promo code SSS15 to get 15% off of your first purchase. That is code SSS15 to get 15% off of all coffee mugs, tumblers, whatever it is that you want to put your favorite beverage in. Also, thank you to our friends at Trike Nutrition. With 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of sugar, and 1 gram of fat, you can get your day started with the best possible and healthy cup of coffee out there on the market. So visit the link below and get yourself 10% off. I want to start it off with the man that has gotten a lot of attention during the offseason and a lot of people that have slapped the label on and said, this is must-win territory for this guy, and that is none other than Lincoln Riley. Here's my thing about Lincoln Riley. I think that Lincoln Riley is a hell of a coach. I think he's been one of the best minds from an offensive standpoint in college football. Here has been the Achilles heel. USC from a defensive ranking standpoint from 2022 to 2024. USC has struggled. There's no question about that. You know, you struggled for several years with Alex Grinch, who was your head coach, who was your defensive coordinator for the first 20 games of your tenure. 2024, things got off to a slow start with D'Anton Lynn. You finished just inside the top 100 in total defense. 2025 was your best year. You finished with the top 50 in total defense. Thought you did significantly better this time around compared to what you have done before. I think the depth in the secondary was a bit better. I do think that you were a lot physical up front, and it showed. It showed when you played teams like Michigan, where you shut them down and were able to get big wins. But it also showed how weak that you can be going up against teams like Notre Dame, where you had opportunities to win the game, but you shot yourself in the foot, where one big play changes the momentum of a game, like Oregon when you have the punt return touchdown, where a game like TCU, where you have a 10-point win and you let them climb back into that football game in the fourth quarter and you give up 10 points in the last 10 minutes, they end up winning in overtime. So here's Lincoln Riley's record ever since they started 11-1. Remember, 2022, his first year at USC, they started 11-1 on the year. They win the Pac-12 championship. They're in the college football playoff that year. This is what goes down. Since then, he is 3-13 against top 25 teams, 16-12 in conference play, 24-17 overall, and he's 6-9 on the road. Defensively, that's been your weak point at times. Like I said already, the defense this past year was a lot better. But guys, you still have to replace a lot in 2026. But from an offensive standpoint, you have 3 big weapons that you can have that can complete your offense. Jayden Maiava has looked at times like a Heisman Trophy contender. He, I thought, had a career year last year. Thought he was much more confident throwing the football, 65% completion rate, 3,700 yards, and 30 total touchdowns. But in 4 losses this past year, he had a 60% completion rate, 8 to 7 touchdown to interception ratio. And in games where he was not very well protected, a la the Nebraska game, which is a great example, he was 9 of 23 for 135 and had a 39% completion rate. He can get mobile, though. That's what I want to see come out of him a lot more. I need him to be more open to getting outside the pocket, being able to utilize his feet and work up to that second level if things start to break down. Another guy that I think is going to get a lot of attention is sophomore King Miller. Near 1,000-yard year last year. I don't think people expected him to have that type of a season. Guys, he was a walk-on at USC. Redshirt freshman year, 2025, boom, breaks out for a near 1,000-yard season. And here's a guy that, like I said already, was a walk-on at USC. You talk about what type of talent that this kid has had. He's had moments where he can break out. He had to beat out guys like Wayman Jordan, who had a pretty impressive resume coming from USC. Went to Hutchinson and Junior College in 2024. One of the best offensive players in JUCO. Was going to be the starting running back. Then he gets his job taken over by King Miller, who got a lot more carries after the Michigan game. Who's to say that Miller doesn't break out again? You have an array of weapons on the outside that you can throw the football to. But here's the thing. From a schedule perspective, this is actually really favorable to you. You have 2 road games that I think are really, really interesting to me. You go to Happy Valley, which I would expect to be at home, which I expect to be a night game. And then you go to Indiana. Those are your only 2 games that you have to worry about from that perspective. And you're home against Ohio State, you're home against Washington, you're home against Oregon. I believe that if USC misses the college football playoff again, then I believe that Lincoln Riley's seat is going to get high. I do not think that USC fans want another season where you finish 8-4 or 9-3 in the regular season, but you miss out on a Big Ten title or a college football playoff. Where you've seen this team get this close to a CFP, but you haven't been able to sniff it just yet. You have all the talent in the world coming back in 2025, but if you fall short again, questions are about to start to arise out in Southern California about the future of Lincoln Riley as the head coach. Number 2, and I think people are going to be in agreement with me on this, and I really believe that that's Kalen DeBoer. What has prevented Kalen DeBoer from really winning at Alabama? What has stopped him from achieving excellence at Alabama? Number 1, I think that it has been questionable play calling down the stretch of games. It has been where your offense will start off really hot and then you'll have silly things just happen. You have a turnover here. You'll give a team great field position. You're not physical up front. That was a problem for Alabama this past year. When you go on that stretch where they beat Georgia on the road, they beat the top 15 Missouri, they beat Vanderbilt at home, they beat Tennessee at night at home. That's a tough stretch that they had to go through. But then you look at the rest of the season after that South Carolina game, they looked vulnerable. They looked extremely vulnerable. They weren't playing complementary football. They looked out of place. They looked out of sync. Ty Simpson just was not being the guy that he was during that 4-game stretch. And I think that would be, is that going to be a problem for a team like Alabama in the future, where you're going to have question marks at quarterback? You are going to have to choose between Austin Mack, a guy that's been around Kalen DeBoer for the last 3 years, or you're going to go with the guy that you claim is the future of your team in Keelan Russell. I don't know. I really don't know. And Alabama two sides of the offensive and defensive line, they got pushed around a lot. This wasn't your mama's Nick Saban type of defense or offensive line where you're seeing dominance, you getting in the middle and causing havoc. They look soft and they look vulnerable. What does Ryan Williams-Coleman look like in 2026? And in my opinion, I've already expressed this very, very highly. He is overrated. I don't think that he is. Yes, he's got big play capability. I get that. Can he be better in intermediate? Can he hang on to the damn football? He had an absolute horrible year last year with drops. You can't accept that, especially for a team like Alabama that has had great receivers come through. What does that look like for you? I don't know. Jeremy Bernard's gone. You know, there's so many guys that are now no longer with the program from this past year. You're going to lose a lot up front. Parker Brailsford and Caden Proctor are gone. Ryan Grubb back in his second full year. Last year was a bit underwhelming. What does he do with a young quarterback? In a season where I would expect Alabama to be outside the top 10 of the preseason for the first time in, I think, since 2007, I believe. Or 2007 or 2008 was the last time that Bama was outside the top 10. It's just incredible to me to see how Alabama has, I wouldn't necessarily say fallen, but I do think expectations have dropped significantly for a team like that. And it's just been underwhelming performances at times where you go on this great stretch and then you'll lose to a team that you don't expect to lose to, a la Oklahoma or a Florida State. It's what's happened. That's what's happened the last several years. You're still bringing in a top 5 head coach, or you're still bringing in a top 5 recruiting class. But what else do you need to bring? You brought in Richard Owens, who's going to be your new offensive line coach, the former tight ends, or he's going to be the new tight ends coach, former offensive line coach at Louisville. Derek Nix is now the wide receivers coach at here. Adrian Clem is offensive line coach. And by the way, guys, Adrian Clem I really like. I think he's been one of the better O-line coaches in college football. Been around the NFL for a little bit, was the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line coach for 3 seasons, was with Oregon as the run game coordinator and offensive line coach, was with New England as the O-line coach. So he's spent a time or two around the block, around college and the NFL level. So he's been around some great programs. He really has. And I think the game that's going to define what Alabama is going to be is obviously that Georgia game. I think early on, if you're not physical with Georgia in 2026, I think people are going, if you lose to Georgia at home, and by the way, that's been Kirby Smart's Achilles heel is Alabama. He has yet to beat Bama in the regular season. Can you finally get one if you're Georgia? And if Bama starts to lose, I think that they'll end up going on a rough stretch where you go to Neyland Stadium, where you have not beaten Tennessee there since the beginning of the decade, 2020. I believe. Yes, you have not beaten Tennessee in Knoxville since 2020. They've taken the last 2. Where you have struggled in Tiger Stadium against LSU a couple of times. Where you've had close games against Texas A&M, at Vanderbilt. Got to play a young team, still going to be pretty good. Auburn. Guys, if Alabama ends up 9-3, 10-2, and if they get bounced in the first round of the college football playoff, is that going to be enough for fans to say, okay, we can stick with Kalen DeBoer for a little while? No, I personally don't think that is That's the thing. I don't think that you'd be accepting of that. I really don't. That's why I say that a guy like Kalen DeBoer has to win now, or else his job is going to be on the line very, very, very soon. You hate to see it because I really think that Kalen DeBoer is one of the better offensive minds in college football. But we'll see, man. We'll see. This one's going to be interesting. And this will be the last one that I have for this list. And I would put Steve Sarkisian in there. Let me tell you why. Look, that was a team that 2 years ago was this close to playing for a national championship. And Texas is going to come back into 2026 with a lot of talent. You bring back Arch Manning, a guy that looked pretty good in his first full year as a starter at Texas, did show that he's vulnerable, that he had some struggles this past year. Thought he was much better active in the pocket. But I do think that there is still going to be some moments where he's going to struggle. I thought that he looked uncomfortable against Florida. Obviously so, because his offensive line kind of disappointed him. Where he's got to have a lot of protection around him. He's got to be able to feel comfortable in the pocket in order to deliver on a row. He's got guys to throw the football to with Ryan Wingo. We'll see if Ryan Niblett is going to get moved to wide receiver, if he's going to get more reps, or if he's going to be primarily a return man. We'll see what happens at that point. You have Cam Coleman to throw the football to. You're going to have a lot of guys that you can have on your offense to work with. We talked about Hollywood Smothers several months ago when he committed to Texas. Guys, Hollywood Smothers is essentially a smaller version of Alvin Kamara. I am that high on him because of what type of athlete that he is. We've seen the tape of him at North Carolina State. He is going to be a special, special player. And I think he could be the defining player that impacts Texas this season, because there was two things that hindered Texas this past year, was your running offense and your offensive line. That's what shut you down from being really good to being a college football playoff contender in 2026. When you lost to teams like Florida, what did you not do? You didn't run the football very effectively. When you had struggles against teams like Kentucky or Mississippi State, what did you do? Not run the football very well. You went to the air. How many sacks did that Texas offensive line give up? Gave up 23 sacks this past year. And you could look at that from a perspective and say, well, that's not bad. Well, when you're playing teams like Florida where you get sacked 6 times, where you play Mississippi State where you get sacked 5, playing Kentucky where you get sacked 3. Florida's one team. Mississippi State and Kentucky being dominant up front, you don't expect that. You don't. Kentucky had the same amount of sacks as Georgia did. Does that say anything to you? Now, I will give him credit. He arguably played his best football the last 3 games of the season, but I do not want to put all of my chips on Arch Manning. I do expect him to improve. I think he looked a lot better, especially in the Citrus Bowl. I get that Michigan had a lot of opt-outs, but I think he looked a lot more poised. I think he was more confident in the pocket. I think he looked better outside. When he felt pressure, he was able to get out, work the sideline, work with his blocks, and get out. be able to run effectively. That's why he ran for 150 yards. But I think with the talent that's coming back for Texas, and look, I'm not saying that this is an easy schedule. When you play Ohio State at home, you go to Neyland Stadium, you play, obviously, Oklahoma and Red River, you get Ole Miss at home, you go to LSU, and then you go to Kyle Field. Let's say Texas misses out on the college football playoff again. I don't think that Sark's going to get fired, but I think that, honestly, changes are going to have to be made. I really believe that. I really do. Pete Kwiatkowski is gone. Defensively, he was not as good as what people expected him to be. But how do they improve with Will Muschamp? I would expect you to get a lot more pressure. That was one thing that Texas struggled with, was quarterback pressure. They took a big step back compared to 2024. I think you're going to get a lot more of that. I think with how aggressive that Muschamp is from a defensive play calling perspective, I think he's going to get the most out of his guys. I really do. I think he's one of the brightest defensive minds in college football. I think he still has a couple years left in him. And he's got the resume to back it up. I really like Will Muschamp, and I think he's going to be just fine with Steve Sarkisian and the hire that he has. But I really believe that Texas has to win in 2026. I really do. But that's going to do it for us here tonight, guys. Make sure you all do us a favor. Hit the like, share, subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or posting a short here on the Southern Sports Scene. Who do you think? Which coach do you think is in a must-win situation right now? Leave it down in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon. Y'all have a good day.